Hello again. Here I am again, the next portion of theories of evolution. Now we come to the person who is considered as the father of evolution, this special discipline in biology, Darwinism and Darwinian evolution. What did Darwin do and gave us this the modern thought of the evolution? Let's seek into the work of Darwin, Charles Darwin, of course. Darwinism, theory of natural selection. You have to associate the term natural selection, Darwinism, with the phrase the natural selection. Therefore, Darwinism means theory of natural selection. Theory that means evolution by natural selection. Nature selects. Nature selects the best. Favors the best. Allows the best. The well adapted to survive and reproduce. This is the key phrase for evolution in Darwinism is natural selection. Therefore, this theory of natural selection proposed by Charles Darwin, an English naturalist, who is considered the father of evolution. His idea of evolution by natural selection was born during his voyage. The voyage just lasted for 5 years around the world. Voyage on HMS Beagle. This is the ship. I will show you. I do have the diagram of the ship. HMS Beagle, a ship of the British Navy in the voyage around the world. They were moving, the British Empire almost ruled the whole world, we can say. Therefore, during those times of the British colonial periods, the British Empire around the world, they moved around the world for oceanographic studies, exploration, and exploitation, of course, if you like. They explored islands, different parts of the world, and they also exploited resources from all over the world because they were ruling the world, we can say, the British Empire. Therefore, during that time, with HMS Beagle, that ship owned by the British Navy, one naturalist was selected to go around the world with this ship for oceanographic and biological research and investigation. Darwin stayed from 1831 to 1836, surveying or studying the South Seas, mainly South America, particularly these Galapagos Islands, very large number of small islands, Galapagos Islands, New Zealand, and Australia. He also visited Australia. This is the ship known as HMS Beagle, voyage of the Beagle around the world, carrying many scientists and soldiers. Started February 12th, 1831. Young Darwin was one of the researchers at the age of 22. Imagine, at the age of 22, immediately after graduation from biology department, he was recommended by his professors as he was genius. He's their genius student. They recommended Charles Darwin to go with the ship for the would-be investigation. Young Darwin was one of the researchers chosen to go with the ship, a navigation that lasted for 5 years around the world. Imagine. Some of the Darwin's evidence came from a visit to the Galapagos Islands. Therefore, inseparable. Darwin and Galapagos Islands, a group of many small islands in the Pacific Ocean, about 600 miles away from the mainland Ecuador in South America. These islands, many scattered islands. Darwin visited especially the five of the islands, which are relatively large and which do have bigger biodiversity of plants and animals. This is the map of the world. It shows you the Galapagos Islands. You can see Pacific Ocean, South America. Ecuador is at the brink of the South American western portion, and Galapagos Islands are almost 125 separate islands in the Pacific Ocean. Charles Darwin was amazed by the diversity of life here and observed species that lived nowhere else in the world. He was very much amazed by biodiversity there, animals and plants. He made observations and even he made drawings of his observations, collected specimens of organisms and fossils. In particular, he was fascinated by the group of birds known as Darwin's finches. They call them now Darwin's finches. They are birds, types of birds known as finches, or now we call them Darwin's finches. We gave to Darwin because he extensively studied these birds, the variety. It's not one type, similar but different types of birds in the islands and in the different islands he visited. Uh, this is one part of his investigation. Of course, this diagram shows you how these birds, which we call them the finches, differed in their beak. It shows you the difference in beak, the mouse part. They share similar traits or similar features, still they have difference, and one difference is observed in their beak size and beak shape. The beak shape, since it is the body part that is used to feed, they are adapted according to the type of food they eat. The different types of birds are thought to originate from a common ancestry because they do have similarity. And they undergo adaptive radiation by colonizing different islands. They have changed their feeding habit, their behavior, their anatomy, therefore they became different. Now if you bring these different species originating from one common ancestor, they can interbreed, so they became different species. Different species originated from one last common ancestor, you see. Therefore Darwin studied these finches particularly. He studied similarities between them as well as obvious differences. He concluded that an ancestral finch had colonized the islands from the mainland in the absence of predators, were able to adapt to the different conditions on the islands, and eventually evolved into different species. You see, one ancestral species that lives in the Ecuador, mainland Ecuador. From mainland Ecuador, uh, migrated to the islands, these islands, the Galapagos Islands, and the different islands do have their own different ecosystems. And in course of time, each each population of that mainland population that invaded the different islands in course of time became different. Now there are 14 different species in 14 different islands, which are all originated from that early ancestral species. Darwin also fascinated in particular by the land tortoises and marine iguanas in the Galapagos. Marine iguanas. By the way, these marine iguanas are excellent swimmers, which eat algae that grows in the ocean, the marine ecosystem. They dive down there and graze on algae. They feed on algae. These are tortoises, of course, different types of tortoises, small, large, medium, with many different features, starting from the neck size, the leg, the shell pattern of the shell. Therefore, diversity, you see, there are similarities, still differences. Therefore, we suspect that these differences are because of adaptive radiation. Similarities are because of the fact that they are derived from one common ancestor, you see. Animals found in the Galapagos Islands, Darwin finches, land tortoises. You can see blue-footed booby, this bird is also there. The marine iguana, you can see it here, down there. The marine iguana is this one. He was really amazed by the biodiversity of animals and plants, flora and fauna in the Galapagos Islands. Ideas that shaped Darwin's thinking. Now, when we come to what made the brain, the mind of Darwin to think about evolution, that's change in organisms in course of time, there are factors. Darwin was highly influenced by the works of some scholars that he read at the time, whose works influenced Darwin's thought to think, Darwin's mind to think about evolution. Three personalities are very important here. One is James Hutton, and the other is Charles Lyell, and the third Thomas Malthus, the economist. Of course, the work of Alfred Russel Wallace is similar work. Alfred Russel Wallace reached to the same conclusion as Darwin's conclusion, that is evolution by natural selection. Otherwise, is not providing some other literature work or study that influences the mind of Darwin to think about evolution. Therefore, this personnel, of course, when Alfred Wallace finally wrote a letter to Darwin that he has reached to the same conclusion as himself, this initiated Darwin to immediately publish his work in evolution by natural selection, because the first come, the first serve, you see. There is competition in the scientific arena also. Therefore, anyway, Darwin was highly influenced by the works of these scholars. And James Hutton, he studied. He was geologist, of course. Theory of geological change. How he described how the earth and the rocks change in course of time. Forces change Earth's surface. Earth much older than thousands of years, as described in the Bible. It's millions of years of old, billions of years old, not thousands of years. Such descriptions and the fact that he put forward about the change on the Earth's surface. The Earth's surface changes. There are internal movements of the Earth. The Earth splits, move apart, and Earth changes. It's not static. This is one idea. So, if the Earth changes, why not living organisms? Was the idea born in the mind of Charles Darwin. The other person who did research, again, a geologist, is Charles Lyell. Geographical features can build up or torn down. You see, still similar ideas written by the second geologist Charles Lyell, which influenced Darwin's thought, which made Darwin to think about change over time, and to started to ask, what about if the Earth can change over time? What about living organisms? Was the question came immediately after the work of these two scientists. Therefore, Charles Darwin is made to change, to think about change in living organisms because of the fact that these two geologists published a literature that describes a change in the Earth in course of time.